Welcome to the webinar Resident Series, Occlusal Splints, Protocol Procedure and Patient Acceptance with Implant Dentures. It is part one of a two-part series with our very own Dennis Urban, CDT. And with that, I get to turn it over to our very own Adam Dreyfus, Corporate Account Manager of University, Government, and Institutions. Take it away, Adam.
Good morning, and thank you so much, Jessica, for the warm welcome. And good morning to all the New York-based residency programs. Again, my name is Adam Dreyfus from NDX, and we are so happy to have you this morning. As Jessica was mentioning, we've been doing this now for roughly, not yet, in May it will be 20 months, but we've been doing this for some time, and we really do hope that you're enjoying these courses and the information that is being shared with you, because we do this for your education and your knowledge, as we really want to invest in the time wisely. I do know that as I do go around to the different sites and we do have these conversations, the feedback that I've been receiving has been nothing but complimentary. And everybody keeps on saying to me that the abundance of information that this man, Dennis Urban, shares is beyond. So we really do thank you for paying attention and getting involved. With that, about getting involved, please, we would love to see your faces. Raise your hands, type some questions. This is interactive. Yes, we understand that Dennis is an encyclopedia, and we know that he doesn't have a Wikipedia page. But the fact of the matter is that Dennis has so much knowledge he does want to share with you. With that, I would like to personally thank you for all your continued support and welcoming me into your worlds, as I know I'm a little bit out of this world this morning. No, with that, seriously, we know that you have choices when it comes to where your laboratory work gets done. We know you have choices when it comes to your education. Myself, Dennis, Jessica, the entire NDX team, we appreciate you partnering with us today, tomorrow, and the future. And without further ado, the encyclopedia himself, Dennis Urban.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it. Thank you, Jessica. And thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning for another edition of the Resident Series. And today is going to be called Protocol, Procedure, and Patient Acceptance with Implant Dentures. And we're going to talk the first part. This is going to be a two-part series. So the first part is going to be on overdentures and attachments. And it's only, this whole presentation, I cut it down to like 2 hours or a little less than 2 hours. So there's a lot more involved with this, but I just wanted to touch on the high points today, and we'll get involved with that. And of course, we want to talk about realistic patient acceptance also with these types of cases. So let's get started. And we'll go through a number of variations here. We talk about science, technique, and application. And we'll go over different materials. We can't cover all the offerings that are out there in the market because of time frame, but I want to hit on the high points that have made me successful with these cases and have made a lot of clinicians successful, oral surgeons, periodontists, and the whole team successful. But more importantly, has given the patients acceptance and patient satisfactions on these types of cases. So without further ado, we're going to get started here, and let's look at some of the cases out there as far as when it comes to full arch reconstruction. It's either going to be a bar case with an overdenture with attachments on top of it. The patient can remove, and it can be cleansable. A lot of patients like this because they're able to take it out of the mouth and keep these dentures cleansable. But then they have the best of both worlds. They have a retentive denture that's not going to move, and it really goes a long way with function and aesthetics. And then we're going to talk a little bit about direct to root attachment directly to the bone. That if the patient has good oral structure, then we can do these types of cases. And we'll go through that a little bit this morning also. And here's just a couple of different bar designs here. Titanium mill bars with locator abutments on top of it. And this is a Dolder bar on the right-hand side. We're not getting too many of those anymore, but they're very retentive. And they work, so there's been a successful type of design all these years. And then, of course, in part two, we'll go through the all-on-4, all-on-6 technique. We are going to touch on that today a little bit. We'll get more deep into the aspects of that in part two of the next month. So we'll talk about conversions and what to expect of these types of cases. And there's a conversion, as you can see right here. So with a strengthener behind it, and this is an all-on 6 case fits, I believe, which I like better. I like all on 6 cases a little bit better because, with all on 4, sometimes when implant fails, you're in kind of trouble there. So I like, although it's been successful, but I like the all on 6 cases better. So, but the important thing is to use the right materials and the correct techniques. It's a reflection of your talents and a reflection of what you can do for the patient and give that patient that final satisfaction that they need and function. So where are we going in implant denture technology? Well, many U.S. labs surveyed claim they had a dramatic increase in implant dentures in the last 5 years, especially in the last 2 years, because a lot of the digital aspect has come into play. It's more predictable and it's more functional. And one survey from Dental Products Magazine said the dentists who would like to increase their implant denture and hybrid business was over 70%. It can be a big chunk of income for your practice when you do these types of cases. And it's with the teamwork between all of us, like I said earlier, the technician and the dentist and the oral surgeon, and at times the periodontist, we work together for these successful cases so we get a predictable outcome. Yeah, so that communication is important. We have all these things, all these types of communication at our fingertips, but sometimes we can't plan a case effectively. So it's important to have an effective planned case. So that's going to have the right outcome, from the onset. We depend on the dentist for the clinical knowledge and training, the assessment of the patient, the appropriate treatment planning. And when it comes to, especially with implant cases, we need that detailed work authorization form. Anything from implant parts to platforms, size, everything we need that on the work authorization form. And digital photography, of course, is a must. And we have to work together with correct materials. And many times we'll call in the implant company to sit down with us on case planning. I'll sit down with the clinician, the oral surgeon, and the implant specialist, and we just go through these cases. And at times we even bring the patient in, just to give them the realistic outlook on what the kind of case they're going to be getting. Sometimes you can't give it a case that's going to be an all in 4 or all in 6. It's going to be a type of case where it's going to have to be a removable type case. So we go through that aspect. We go through the history of the patient to make sure that we're giving this patient the correct type of appliance. And communication from us at the laboratory, the communication with the certified dental technician. You depend on our technical expertise, knowledge of procedures and materials, because we do this every day on a daily basis. I have over 40 years of doing this. I've probably seen every kind of case possible. Maybe not, but it's I think it's 75,000 dentures later. No exaggeration. I've done a lot of these cases, and we need the appropriate feedback to you on impressions, bites, shade, and everything in between. So if we see something, we say something. We'll stop that case at that point, and we'll get together again and perhaps plan it a little bit better. Sometimes we get cases, for instance, I'm going to show you some different implant attachments later. Sometimes we can't use a locator or an attachment like that because there's just not enough room. When you start grinding acrylic and teeth over these attachments, sometimes you're sacrificing the integrity of the tooth and the shade and the strength of these cases, because it's a proven fact that with these types of cases, there's a lot of force going on these, more so than a regular denture. So we want something that's going to hold up in the mouth and that's going to withstand those forces, those occlusal forces. So all this is important. Everything you see here is important. Even like I said, digital photography. At times, I'll even get a little video clip of how the patient's going through excursions. If they had problems previously, they might need some orthodontic work first, or they may need some type of TMJ adjustments. So on these types of cases, if there's an opposing arch. So implant dentures. So we're going to talk about overdentures first. Like I mentioned before, we want to get the ultimate result. And here you see here, this is just a little outline of an implant denture with 3 attachments. It's great to have, the norm for these on a lower and on a mandibular type denture is about 2 attachments, pretty much on the cuspid sides, on the other cuspids, or between the cuspid and bicuspid. But that extra implant is going to really add a lot of retention and stability. So let's talk a little bit about that. So first thing I want to mention, this is a quote from Dr. Samuel Strong and Dr. Joseph Masad, who's a great doctor, both of them great dentists and clinicians. And they said that removable implant overdenture has become a well-established option if not the most preferred for the edentulous patient. And critical to the success of this procedure is not only an accurate impressions of implant abutments, but also extremely vital is the detail of the entire edentulous ridges around the peripheral borders to maintain stability, retention, and deflect unwanted food entrapment around denture margins. This is really important. So you don't want to get away if you're doing an overdenture like this. Like I showed, we still want to capture those borders with border molding and capture all those anatomical landmarks because it's really important. Because once that food gets entrapped underneath, if you don't have the correct impression, that could be a big problem for the patient. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more in either part later on or in part 2. So let's talk about implant overdentures. Over 20 now, it's a little more than this now, but 20 million Americans are edentulous, and undergraduate programs across the country, they realize now that 2 implants for lower overdentures pretty much are the recommended treatment choice over leaving somebody fully edentulous on the lower. It's an easy way to give that patient the retention and function that they really need. And the amount of bone loss that dentistry has seen in fully edentulous patients during the past 10 generations is frightening to consider. I mean, I can remember all the cases I used to get in the lab. I used to look at these on the mandibular models and see like there was hardly any bone density there. It was flat ridges, a lot of flat ridges, not that many bony ridges. And this was the atrophy that happened over a long period of time, because the correct cases weren't prescribed or the patient didn't follow the protocols. So dentistry taught that bone atrophy was normal at that time, years ago. But now we know that 2 implants in the anterior mandible will stop the progressive bone loss and preserve the ridge. Really important. And some of the implant overdenture purposes we're looking for, of course, we want to create natural aesthetics. We want to enhance facial appearance, compensate for that lost soft tissue, give that patient the self-esteem they're looking for. And they want that, I mentioned this a lot, that predictability over and over again, and to enhance that function with the right occlusal scheme. And we'll talk about different occlusal schemes also with, lingualized occlusion, centric occlusion, physiologic centric occlusion. There's a lot of different occlusal schemes that work, but with the implant dentures, I always recommend lingualized occlusion, and which is when the lingual cusp of the upper goes right into the central fossa of the lower, and it's going to relieve any off-axis stress on the implant. Because what happens when you have off-axis stress on an implant? They fail. So we'll get into that a little bit more. So I'm just teasing you now on a lot of these topics here, but we'll get more into that as we go on. So, and most patients can afford one type of implant overdenture since they're less expensive than with the fixed prosthesis cases. So indications for implant overdentures: compromised support for a conventional denture. That patient has a lot of trouble with sore spots, moving around, couldn't chew correctly, poor neuromuscular coordination, a low tolerance of mucosal tissue, like I mentioned earlier, with sore spots, especially on that removable acrylic base. If things weren't done correctly from the onset with border molding and correct impressions, and they kind of improvised and sacrificed quality here and there, it's going to be a problem. So that's why we've seen so much patient dissatisfaction with complete dentures and their desire for more stability and comfort. And of course, we have to look at patients' history with congenital or oral defects that need oral rehabilitation. And on the second part of this presentation next month, I'm going to leave you hanging here. We have a great case with an 18-year-old male and had some congenital and oral defects, and we came through with a great overdenture for this patient. I'll show you that step-by-step procedure next month. So 3 basic type of implant overdentures. We're talking about a mainly tissue-supported implant overdenture where we have 2 prefabricated individual attachments, and the overdenture is mainly tissue-borne. So, and many of the overdentures are like that. We depend on the stability of the denture on the tissue and also retention with the attachments. Then we have a tissue implant supported overdenture, and they're more implant-borne compared to the previous type. And there's 2 implants and a resilient bar assembly should be utilized. This is one of my favorite types of cases. If there's enough room and the patient can tolerate it, I like even a smaller bar is great. It's just going from bicuspid to bicuspid. That's great. That's a great type of bar also, and we can use a little bit of that tissue to help support that also. Then we talk about a fully implant supported denture, an attachment assembly that usually contains 4 or more implants, and the attachment assembly transfers all those masturbatory forces to the supporting implants. And at that point, you can have minimal flange and tissue coverage on those types of cases. What is treatment strategies and deciding factors? Well, again, we have to look at bone quantity and the patient's expectations for the treatment outcome. A lot of times I've been every one of my seminars, we get input from doctors that say, oh, patients bring in photos and they want to look like certain movie stars, or they want to look like they did when they were 18 years old. And things change over the years. And sometimes we can't do that. Sometimes there's just not enough room. Sometimes they need some rehabilitation with their occlusion to get them into a more open bite before anything can be done. So that jaw relationship is really, really important, and we have to see that distance and analyze that distance between the upper and lower alveolar ridge, because there's a lot of components that come into play when we're talking about implants. You have the implant, you have the bar, you have the attachments, you have the acrylic and the teeth, and then we have to have a functional case and an aesthetic case too. So all this comes into play when we talk about the expertise between all of us coming together as a team and planning these dentures. Some of the common mistakes in constructing implant-supported overdentures are poor treatment planning. Distorted final impressions, probably one of the number one calls that we have to make at the laboratories, the distorted impression. Inaccurate master models, as far as working models. That's why, we have verification indexes when we're doing bar cases is part of the protocol, and you cannot deviate from that protocol. Poor fitting frameworks and the wrong choices of material and attachments can be detrimental to the case. Successful implant supported overdentures, we want a stress-free fit of the attachment assembly, great oral hygiene so the patient can clean and it can be cleansable, and the biocompatibility of the chosen materials. And one of the things that comes to mind when I talk about biocompatibility is the resin or the acrylic. We want to utilize an acrylic that's going to have flexural strength and it's going to have high impact resistance. You can't have one without the other because it's going to be brittle or not strong enough. So there are great acrylics now on the market for these types of cases. And then we talk about denture teeth. And denture teeth are really important too if you on utilizing the right denture teeth on these cases. Something that's going to hold up almost like wearability of natural teeth. And there's a lot of great choices out there to choose from. High biomechanical strength, functional and equilibrated occlusion, really important. And I put lingual lines in there just to show that I've been most successful with different occlusal schemes with this type of occlusal scheme with lingualized occlusion. And of course, we want natural looking aesthetics, and the teeth that are out there now with denture teeth, they look like crowns. They're so aesthetic. They look great. They look real. They're based on the anatomy and the physiology of natural teeth, not as opposed to years ago. A lot of these denture teeth didn't look natural. So, and then we want the absence of interference with normal phonetics. So we want great phonetics also when the patient's able to speak. And all these things come together for a successful case. So let's talk about with a milled bar or without a bar. So, well, if you look at a bar can achieve evenly distributed forces between the implants. And the direct method with overdenture attachments incorporated into the denture base and right into the bone or into a root attachment, without a mill bar, sure, it costs less and it requires less vertical room, but much better for the patient. The final case design is determined with what we have to work with intra-orally, the amount of space, the physiological features of the patient, and both methods require support from the tissue and the attachment. So when you're talking about overdentures, just keep that in mind. It's not just the attachments that are giving that total support. We need support from the tissue also. And that's why it's so important to get that accurate impression. And just keep in mind that it rests on a soft tissue and the attachments act only as a retentive element, preventing the denture from dislodging. So advantages of overdentures, we want to preserve bone, better chewing efficiency, good peace of mind and security for you and the patient, and it has stability and comfort. It really works really well. And, there's a lot of choices to choose from here. We have the removable solutions from a cost-effective solution to a premium solution. And I like to say effective patient treatment plans. I don't like to really to say cost-effective. What's ever going to be best for the patient? So yeah, I think both these solutions from three of these solutions are premium solutions. It's just what's right for the patient. Directly to the bone or directly to the root, a small bar attachment or the attachments like the attachment assembly like you have here with a fixed solution. So all these are great treatment plans, but it's what's best for the patient. So let's see what, look at these pictures here. And we see this patient here without a denture. See how sunken in the patient's lip is. His lower lip is really coming out in the photo here. And then you can see in the second photo here with an implant hybrid case, where we cut away a lot of the flange so it's more cleansable. It still doesn't look natural. Still looks a little sunken in, you know, and so with an overdenture, with a flange, with a full impression, look how nice and natural this patient looks. Nice smile, looks younger, less wrinkles, and it was more functional. So the choice for this type of case, we went with the overdenture with the flange, you know, and that worked out best. So a lot of trial and error with this type of case here. So removable implant dentures with individual attachments versus bar attachments. How do we really choose? Well, let's look at the information that we have to go by here. So when you talk about considerations with attachments only, an ideal ridge structure is needed. So for instance, a lower full denture on a patient with an ideal ridge and good bone structure can easily have overdenture attachments placed into the final denture without the use of a mill bar. And we see that quite a bit, you know, and one of the reasons why I mentioned this also, I want to show you some of the challenges that a lot of clinicians have when it comes to relining these types of cases. So, well, I have that in this presentation today. But we also want to make sure that we have a metal structure that's placed internally for strength. Because I've seen these cases made over the years, a lot of them without that metal substructure, because either the clinician didn't want to spend the money on a framework, or it was just, it wasn't done at the lab. And we want to make sure we have that internal framework, because 90% of the time it's going to break, this denture is going to break from the forces right around where those attachment areas are. So we'll talk about that and what kind of substructures there are in place today that we can choose from. And an upper denture will be functional with just attachments if the patient's bite is in an ideal class 1 occlusion. So we have to look at the occlusal scheme, class 1, class 2, class 3. You know, those skeletal classifications are really important when we're looking at planning these types of cases. So often the anterior ridge on an upper, it has mobility if the patient is not an ideal occlusion. And it causes a mesiodistal rock that can put all that stress on the attachments. And this is when we consider a mill bar assembly. You know, if the patient has a flat ridge, there'll be no tissue support. And all of the pressure will be on the attachments. And if possible, a fixed case might be better in this situation. A bar with horizontal lock attachments, they act as sort of a fixed patient removable prosthesis. And you know, there's a lot of different attachments we could choose from, but sometimes those horizontal lock attachments really work well too. So another thing to consider. So when we talk about protocol, we don't want to deviate from protocol in these types of cases. So, you know, we want to get that preliminary impression of the healing caps. We'll make a custom tray final impression. And with that final impression, you know, we're going to also make a verification jig if we're making a bar. We don't really need it if we're, you know, when we're doing attachments directly to the bone or to the root, you know, and we're going to send out a bite rim. We're going to get a good bite registration, and then we'll send you a setup or try-in, and everything looks good. We'll do insertion and attachment connection. And we'll talk about attachment connection a little later. It can either be done in a laboratory, which I like to do in the laboratory, or at times we'll actually go to the dental office and help you with the insertion of the attachments. And there's a couple of ways to do that. So there's a lot of choices out there. Can be confusing. I'm just going to touch on a few today because of the time factor. And so some of the attachment choices are, of course, Locator. You know what the Locator attachments. These attachments are, you know, probably the most popular on the market, and you have a range of different choices out there, from cases that have angulation to cases that where you want more retention. You have a lot of different retentive values to choose from, and so this is a great option, Locator, and it can be cast tube attachments, almost like a post and core type attachment I've seen, root attachments, mill bars, implants of all different kind of cuff heights for the implants too. So there's a lot to choose from out there with Locator attachments, and they're innovating and improving at all on a regular basis. So great choice for attachments, and you have all these different options to choose from, which is great. Then we have ERA attachments also. You know, I just want to move this here 1 second here. And we have ERA attachments also, which to choose from, and then we can. My screen is frozen here. All right, come on. This should work. Here we go. Good. Sorry about that. Yeah, we got, every time I try to hide my controls up here, you can't see those controls on the screen, can you? Okay, good. Great. But so let's go back here. ERA attachments. This has been popular for a long, long time, ERA attachments, and even for implant cases. I've had so many successful cases with ERA attachments also. And again, this is a case that we did with a bar assembly, and it was four implants on an upper on a maxillary. And you can see once we had the final impression, we put the impression analogs. We did a soft tissue model. And not too sure why we sectioned this here. I don't usually section it like that, but and then we had the verification jig made by registration and the bar made. So once that bar was made, and everything fit correctly, we wanted to make a strengthener inside. This is a chrome cobalt strengthener, and it worked out very well. I probably would have done a different design on this. I would have had some more retention going towards the bar a little bit, and maybe on top of the bar. Because this is why we have a strengthener around the around those attachments. So this worked out, but I would have done this design a little bit different. But the good thing is that it's a horseshoe design, and the patient can feel that palate and taste really well with this type of design also as an overdenture. So it's not all acrylic. We're able to do something with a metal framework here, and you can see on the try-in what we did. We attached these the housings to the framework, did a wax up. And then we were ready to do the try-in, and this is the finished case. So this worked out pretty well. And then many times what we'll do, I'll process these attachments. I'll have processing attachments when I'm processing the case. And when the case is all finished, I'll ream it out and I'll go back to the model and make sure everything fits. Okay, so as you can see here, it's a nice case here, nice looking denture. Worked out really well. And this is the patient here, upper and lower, did an upper and lower here. Look how nice that came out. Aesthetic, functional, and it was a fairly simple case. I mean, it was pretty good design, simple design, and these mill bars. This is an older mill bar assembly. So the newer mill bars that like pieces of jewelry, we call them bling. The bling comes back to the laboratory. They look like jewelry. They're really nice. So it's amazing what can be done now. Excuse me. OT Equator. It's a 3-in-1 system. That's another option. And these Equators, I utilize these a lot. And it's they're castable. They're for implants, for mill bars, and they're compatible with all implant brands. The cuff heights from 1 to 7 millimeters, and it has a standard 2 millimeter thread. So you can utilize these on top of the bar also. And sometimes we have to mill those little threaded areas on the bar, and we can utilize these, with any position on that bar. But you can see the height on this, and I'll show you a little bit better with the comparison to the Locator. I'll use these a lot when I don't have that much room in the mouth. They're very retentive, but you can see the difference here between the Equator and the Locator. You're probably saying, hey, you know what? The Locator is not that much bigger. Well, yeah, when you look at this in your hands and in the mouth, it is a lot bigger than an OT Equator. And for this type of case here, as far as the minimum amount of room that we might have to work with, the Equator will work better. The wearability is great. It's the retentive level is great, pretty similar to the Locator. So we have another choice here. So there's a lot of different choices out there on the market, and this, I probably have another 20 or 30 types of attachments here. Well, I'm talking about the ones that really work well, and we see the most of. So here's the OT Equator. This was actually, these attachments are processed in the mouth, and you can see the denture was reamed out, and these attachments are processed intra-orally and worked out really well. The patient had a good functional denture with a nice 4 implants directly to the bone, no bar assembly on this one. Patient had enough room and enough, the clearance was there, and denture worked out really well. So there's your different comparisons right here between the OT Equator and a Locator. Both of them work really well. You just have to figure out what situation you want to use them in. This case I'm going to show you next was a case that I inherited from a laboratory. This is when I was managing a lab down south. I inherited a case from a laboratory in New York while I was down south. And they said, Dennis, we're having a lot of trouble with this case. Can you take it over for us? And they just weren't following the right protocol. So this was the case here. It was just 4 implants on an anterior region. Very little ridge on the posterior, so we didn't have a lot of support in those areas there, but we wanted something that was going to be retentive and stable. So we decided to make a bar and have attachments over the bar. And this was a verification jig that the lab had made for me before I started the case, which worked out. You know, I don't usually make them like this, but this worked out great anyway. So, and we made a bar assembly, and this, I'll show you what that looks like in a second here, but it was going to be a full lower denture. I came to the, only to the first molar occlusion. And there's the bar that was made, you know, and we have 4 of the Equator type attachments on the bar. Worked out really well. And this is the bar inserted in the denture for a try-in with the framework. So we attached the attachments to the framework, had a try-in, worked out really well. We went right to a finish. If you look really hard, you can see that framework on the ridge area on the posterior region there. But there you can see a little bit better. See, so that's the finished denture. I like to show you internally. So we have that acrylic, good high impact acrylic, a good substructure with that metal internally with that on that denture there. The occlusion was great, the aesthetics were great, and we used the Equator attachments. Really nice case, snapped into place. The patient was really happy with it. So that was a real successful case. So we talk about framework strengtheners. There's a lot of things you can utilize. You know, just stay away from. If anybody's going to tell you, yeah, we're gonna bend a metal strengthener and put it internally, that's not going to work. You know, it's they have these preformed lingual strengtheners that you can utilize. It's not really going to work that well. You know, maybe on a temporary case, if you're doing a conversion or something like that, that'll hold out for a few months. But you want something that's going to be a cast strengthener, chrome cobalt, metal strengthener. And then, you know, this is something that I did in the lab myself when we just waxed up these types of strengtheners to go over the attachments and we cast them. This worked out great also, you know, especially with this overdenture that you see on the right-hand side. And that was a direct to the root overdenture with post and core attachments, which worked out great. The other options we have now, we have some great super polymers on the market that can be designed on with CAD/CAM technology. And you can design these types of frameworks. You can even, and I love CAD/CAM technology for partial dentures and making inner strengtheners for frameworks also. It's so easy to do. What you see on the screen is what you're going to get when it's milled or printed. And these types of frameworks here, they're really, really strong. And this is a peak type of material or a super polymer material. Really works out well. So those are the options now. It makes the case a lot lighter, maybe a little bit more aesthetic. You know, and so it's really important to it. But what happens when you have a case with this divergency issues like this? So we got over 30 degrees of divergency here, and we have to compensate for it. So now with the attachment systems that are out there, the overdenture attachment systems, we can compensate for these. This happens to be a Rhine 83 attachment called a Smart Box. But if you have that divergency, as you can see here right near the cuspids, you know, if you don't follow the guidelines for the special attachment, you're going to be wearing out attachments on a regular basis. It's going to be really expensive. And for the patient, it's not going to be too good for the patient also. So you have these types of attachments for many, you know, for Locator attachments, ERA, and with the Rhine 83 attachments. And with the Rhine 83, again, it's called a Smart Box. You got that housing with a rotational type of housing there that compensates for over 30 degrees. I think for the Locator, it goes up to, I think, 40 to 50 degrees divergency. So a lot of good choices there. So let's look at some of the bar types, and we talked a little bit about this before. So, you know, this is, you know, here's your milled bar with Locator attachments on it. A lot of different things to choose from here. You got a ball attachment you can utilize. There's another milled bar, nice milled bar with the Locator attachments, and this is a little closer to the ridge here. This goes all the way posteriorly. This is going to be a big case here, so that's a large milled bar. But you can see how nicely designed they are, really nice. And there's a Dolder bar, which we did for many years. These are great type of designs here, but I gotten away from the Dolder bar over the years. It's just a little less work for the other and good results with the other types of Locator with other types of overdenture bars and milled bars. And hater bars, we still get a lot of hater bars, a lot of hater clips. Many times I'll even do a combination attachments, like for instance, Locator attachments and hater clips possibly on the anterior region, Locator attachments on the posterior region, and the retention is great and it's comfortable for the patient. So a lot of different choices to choose from here. So again, Locator attachments you can see here, you know, a lot to choose from. Overdenture considerations. The attachment I mentioned earlier requires support from the tissue and the attachments. So I just wanted to show that slide again here. So let's talk about, see how much time we have here. We're good to go. Okay, we're going to talk about relining overdentures. So I get calls all the time with doctors saying, Dennis, every time we reline an overdenture, it doesn't come out right, doesn't seat back the way it should, and I have a lot of problems with it. So let's look at what we're looking at. Should we leave the housings in when we reline them or remove them? So we're going to show a step-by-step procedure here, and impression taking, border molding, the necessary chairside materials, and something that's going to lead to patient acceptance. And we're going to look at the existing locator evaluation of the denture, and then communication with us at the laboratory. So when you're talking about a locator denture that's been done, and like we talked about, a lot of the retention comes from resting on a tissue. That tissue is going to resorb, maybe not as much as with a regular full denture, but it's going to resorb, and we want something that's going to be stable. So you're probably going to have to reline this in one time or the other. So let's look at the pros and cons here. We're leaving locator housings and inserts in the denture. Well, there's more cons. So leaving those locator houses, a chance of not seating completely. The impression material gets inside the housing, and most of the time we need to remount and reprocess. So it saves. The pros are it saves chair time, but really not. You're still spending a lot of time with adjusting. So how about removing the locator attachments, housings, and inserts? Well, the cons are extended chair time, higher parts expense, but the pros are it's accurate positioning of those housings and inserts, and it's easily picked up in the impression. You can cure the housings directly in a reline or process chair side, and it's a proven technique. And this is what I've been using all these years. So first thing we do, we take those existing locator housings out of the denture, grind them out, make sure you have plenty of room there. There's special Carbide burrs that you can buy to remount these dentures. There's a Chairside Recess Bur, and Zest has a kit that's great, a chairside kit that you can utilize. And then this is the complete system here, which is great. So there's anything from the titanium abutments all the way to the aluminum housings, and I'm also with the analogs. So, but let's talk about relining the denture here. So after it's reamed out the denture, you're going to place a new denture locator on the abutments. So. And that's going to act as the impression copings in this step in the reline process. So we're going to use the marking materials to check that you have a passive fit. Really important. Roughen up the borders, and why? Because we want to maintain good border molding, and we want to capture all the anatomical landmarks, and that's what when we're taking the impression. So we're going to use an adhesive on the internal aspect on the borders. Border mold with whatever material you're used to using. I like to use a polyvinyl material, maybe a monophase, a heavy body. Come in the mouth, make sure the patient moves around, get all that musculature, take it out, and then put that. I like a lighter body material or medium body when you're taking a reline impression. And there's the pickup of the impression caps in this full lower denture here. And then we're going to use model analogs. You can send it to us at the lab. We'll pour a model. And there's this is the cast after the model is poured. We're process the reline, and it's almost like having a new case. This is after it's processed. We finish it down and polish it and send it back to you. Either you can process these and we can leave a space in here, and you can process this chair side, which is fine also. But I would say the majority of the time we're doing this in the lab and processing them in the lab. So, and then we'll pluck out the processing units, inserts, and put in the more retentive ones. So easy way to do a successful, predictable reline on these types of attachment cases. And this is not just for locator attachments. This is for all the types of attachments that are on the market. And this just shows the final reline and putting those processing caps, whatever retention value you need to have, you can pop those in and do that. So, and there it is. And some of the chairside materials that are great to use. This is a chairside material from Zest, I believe it's called Chairside. My favorite one is called Quick Up, and we'll talk about this more in the second part too. And it's a material that doesn't smell, doesn't heat up. It sets in about 2 minutes, and you put a primer around the area you want it to cure to, like where the housings would be. Put that in there, put that Quick Up material in, seat it in the mouth, take it out of the mouth. If there's any voids, you can always come over it with a light cure material that comes with it also. So Great material from a company called Locator. I'm not getting anything for saying this. It's just, I like to tell you what works best, even for chairside conversions. Okay, what do we have here? We have 841, perfect. We're going to touch a little bit now on growing your removable business with immediate load cases, and then we'll get into the real meat and potatoes and things in the second part. So let's talk about immediate load or all-on-4, all-on-6 cases. As you can see here on this picture here, on this denture here, you can see the angulation of two of the implants. And that's important because with implant placement on all-on-4, the posterior most implants are tilted at 45 degrees or less. As you can see, it's a graftless procedure. Bone grafting is avoided by tilting those posterior implants and utilizing the available bone. So bone density is an important factor. And the immediate function is for fixed provisional denture or bridge, or patients meeting criteria for immediate loading of implants. And if you have 6 or more implants, they have to be placed vertical, and sinus grafting may be necessary. But you look at, I'm going to go back here and talk about the patients meeting the criteria. You're talking about patients, and this is amazing to me. It's just amazing to me all the time. When I do my chairside conversions, so many patients have gone in the surgeon in the morning, gone to the surgeon in the morning, had 6 or 8 teeth extracted, had implants placed. Then they either come to the general dentist office, or everybody meets at one office there, or it could be at the surgeon's office. And then I'll do a chairside conversion on an immediate denture and ream that out, make it cleansable. We process all these abutments and the temporary abutments in there, and then temporary cylinders rather. And then the patient walks out of the office with a functional full denture. It's great, a screw retained denture, and they'll wear that for about 4 to 6 months, and then we'll finally make the bar for that denture. But it's amazing what these patients go through in one day, and they get up and walk away. I remember one patient saying, I asked her, I said, "What are you going to do tonight? You're just going to go home and relax?" She goes, "No, I'm going to a Broadway play with my husband, and then we're going to go out to dinner too." She couldn't eat anything hard or firm, but they still went out, and the patient was functioning. So it's amazing what the patient can go through with these types of cases. So the all-4 treatment facts, they've proven long-term solutions with high survival rates. So and they have stable marginal bone levels and healthy soft tissue for both tilted and axial implants. So it's been a good, successful product if it's done right. So here's a photo of a radiographic image with those tilted implants there. So then we utilize most of the time the multi-unit abutment concept. They're carefully designed to rehabilitate both edentulous and partially edentulous patients, and particularly when using all-on-4, all-on-6 type of techniques. So they come in a bunch of different sizes and a bunch of different angulations. So you have to make sure they're utilizing the right angulations. Anywhere to straight and angle, 70-degree and 30-degree variants. And they're available in 9 different collar heights, so it can be confusing, these types of abutments. So because we really have to place them in the right direction. So many times we'll use a special jig that tells you to place these in the right direction. Of course, when you rotate them just a little bit in the wrong direction, everything can be thrown off. So there's a multi-unit aligning instrument that's utilized, and it saves time with the abutment selection. And it's just a simplified method of utilizing this. I don't have time to go into this today, but there's a lot of tools out there that are available to you for these multi-unit abutments. I've been called into the dental office so many times. "Hey, dentist, the bar's not seating correctly. What's going on here?" And if the multi-unit abutment was not in the right position, even though we sent a nice type of guide to go by, so it's or a matrix to go by. Yeah, but you have to be careful with these. So. Then we have our 3D planning software. This has been a godsend because, through cone beam computer tomography or CD images, they're designed to prepare the osteotomy and then perform the correct implant placement utilizing the appropriate sleeves. So there's 4 major steps. We're going to talk about this quickly here, and diagnostic or data acquisition. So we have to look at the bone volume, the bone density, the anatomy of the area to be restored, the type of restoration, what type of loading, and of course, the number of implants, and we have to take into consideration aesthetics and function. And image technology, we have to depend on for precise digital plan and implant placement. Very predictable, and impressions may be taken conventionally or digitally. Most of the time we're getting digital impressions on these types of cases here. So when we talk about virtual planning, we got that 3D data set of DICOM, and that's imported directly into the appropriate planning software. There's a number of different softwares out there. And then it's merged and scanned with the impression, and we get an STL file. And then that implant is positioned in the accordance with the patient's natural anatomy and the desired income. So this really works out well with these types of cases. And the surgical guide production is either done at the place with the implant company or where the bar is being manufactured or in a laboratory. So the surgical procedure, we want to secure that surgical guide, prepare the osteotomy line with the recommended implant surgical instruments. And many of the implant companies will guide you and give you, a sequential type of plan to do these types of osteotomies. And the proper guided surgery kit in conjunction with surgical protocol and the surgical guide indicate which instruments are needed at each site. So it may make it very easy and predictable for you. And these instruments, along with the surgical guide, allow for a guided insertion of the implants. And the dental laboratory's role is, case planning on implants, denture type, and occlusion, and we'll work closely with the dentist, surgeon, and implant company. And on that day of surgery, we're there for you to support you with the conversion and then help you with future case planning. And on the day of surgery, the certified dental technician will come to the office and assist with everything. So let's see how much time we have, Adam. I'm just looking like you. We have a few more minutes, right? And then, so the prosthetic procedure for dental conversion. So on a day of conversion, we have that denture in our hand, and this is the easiest way to do this. And I'll fill it up with impression material, sort of a heavy body VPS. I found out the thinner, lighter body ones tends to go where the surgical sites are. You want to keep that away from the surgical sites. And you can see here, on this slide here, we have the impression and the locations of the abutments, and it's recorded in the impression. I'll start drilling small holes through the impression material and into the denture, and I'll take a larger burr and make a larger hole to compensate for the size of that temporary cylinder. Place those temporary cylinders in low profile abutments and make sure they're completely seated. Take a radiographic image or an x-ray to make sure they're seated. Really important. I could tell you stories about what happened in the past, so I don't have time today, but we'll touch on that next time. Put that cylinder, try it in the mouth, make sure everything clears. Then at this point, we take a little marker and put a little black mark on where the occlusal areas are. I'll cut those down, and then we'll place the denture and we'll cure, put that rubber dam on. Use the quick up material around the cylinders, let them set, maybe do 2, 3 at a time. I like to do maybe 2 at a time, make sure everything's seated correctly. And then we'll finish it and polish it. And there's your provisional prosthesis right there. This is some photos of the case in the mouth, of a case that was done intraorally. Good size for the temporary cylinders. The doctor cured this in the mouth. You can see how nice that looks here. This is not a denture I made, so but this is a doctor. You can see he's pretty happy. He's got a bottle of champagne ready to celebrate. And you do get that satisfaction. You have to go through all this planning and case planning and having successful cases like this, both for all of us, the lab, the dentist, and the surgeon, and also the patient. So this is like a 2-minute thing here. I want to talk about how we're utilizing printed technology for hybrid transitional dentures. We're actually utilizing the surgical guide now to utilize and print dentures. So we use the surgical guide. We have all the sites where we need. We know the exact areas where those temporary cylinders are going to be. And the denture is actually printed with access, and the teeth are printed with access holes already for the temporary cylinders. So we eliminate a lot of that work that I just showed you, chairside. And there's the final denture prepared with the transitional denture with the access holes. So here you go. So it makes life a lot easier. So with that, that's the end of part 1. Well, I'll keep you in suspense for part 2. We have a lot of good information coming up in part 2. But thank you for joining us today. And if there's any questions, please feel free to ask.
Oh, Dennis, thank you so much for spending the time this morning and sharing your knowledge. There are a few tidbits that you mentioned that I just want to reiterate and expand upon that everyone, I know you all have to get to clinic real quick, so I'll make this really quick. As you can see, there's so much information, so many parts and pieces when it comes to these types of restorations. Please know that NDX is dedicated to working with all major manufacturers to supporting you as we go through this endeavor of learning this process. Every major manufacturer does usually reach out to NDX as we are that expansive in this industry. So know that we are very collaborative in these efforts, and we are here for you virtually, in person, chairside during the process. Whatever you might need, please know that NDX is here to support you. With that, I know that you're all very busy and you all need to get ready to see those patients, as we want to see those cases as well. We would like to thank you for your time and dedication to this effort that we're putting forward. And just remember, the next time you're on the subway and you hear, see something, say something, think of Dennis Urban when it comes to making a denture.
That's right. That's right.
Have a wonderful day, everybody. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and talk to you all soon. Have a wonderful day.
Take care. Thank you. Have a
Happy
great day.
Valentine's Day. Thank you.
Bye-bye now. Thank you.